Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Scrappy Piano Teacher podcast. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Jaclyn, but of course, you can call me Jaci. And this podcast is for teachers who want honest, real-life conversations about running a studio, finding balance, and of course, creating musical moments that matter, all while keeping things practical, flexible, and of course, down to earth. Now, I'm going to just jump on in and share a quick story with you guys. Right after the pandemic, I had one of those big studio shifts that changed a lot for myself, but I didn't realize it until I was doing it. So let me explain. I had been renting space out of a multi-teacher studio for, maybe 8-ish years. And after the pandemic, my husband and I decided to renovate our basement into a studio. It's got its own walk-in entry. It has a waiting room. It has its own bathroom, which was a lot of fun to decorate. And then of course my studio. So it's really, really nice. We really, really love it. But it was funny when I transitioned, I was treating it exactly the same way as I did at the multi-teacher studio. And over time, I suddenly realized, I can change things up. I can do different things. I don't have to follow the same rules. I don't have to follow the same format. And that's going to bring me to what I'm going to be talking about today. Because I had moved to my home from the multi-teacher studio, there was also a change in my student load. And what I mean by that is I was able to bring on a whole bunch more students, and most of them were all around the same age. Most of them were beginners. So as I started teaching these students, I noticed that I was literally repeating myself on the same lesson day after day. And I was like, wow, I'm getting deja vu here. I've already talked about this umpteen times. I don't know if that's ever happened to you before, but when it does, it gets a little mundane and repetitive. And then I get bored, the students get bored, even if it's the first time they've seen it, because they are feeding off of my energy. And I like to think of myself as being like such a fun person. I mean, why wouldn't a 7-year-old just want to hang out with me all alone for 45 minutes, right? I don't know. But for whatever reason, I think a 7-year-old would have a lot more fun hanging with another 7-year-old in a lesson. So I started thinking about it and I thought, you know what? What if I put some of these kids together? They're all learning the same thing anyway. We can have a little bit more fun. It can cut back on my time and it'll just be good for everyone. And that, my friends, is how I started what I call buddy lessons, though I think most people call them partner lessons. And whatever you call them, all it is just two students in one lesson learning together with you, the teacher. And yeah, for me, it started as a small experiment, but it ended up really reshaping how I teach and how I schedule. And honestly, they just made lessons more fun. So last month, I was at the Indiana Music Teacher Association conference, which let me tell you what a fun group of teachers they were. They were hilarious and very, very upbeat and just really excited to be teaching music. And during my session, I mentioned my partner lessons just in passing. So my sessions was really just about the private student and creative ways that you can do group lessons with them, like performance classes, workshops, that kind of thing. But afterwards, when I was talking to teachers and getting questions, the questions mainly kept coming back to my buddy classes. And I was like, well, that's not what I came here to talk about, but okay, I'll talk about it. But I wasn't really prepared to articulate the answers to their questions. They really wanted to know how I structure them, what the lessons look like, how to keep them balanced between collaboration and independence. Example, they don't want them to look like a lab all the time, but they also want to give some one-on-one attention. And since the Indiana Music Teacher Association conference, I've noticed that this is just something that teachers ask me about a lot. And I've never put too much thought into it. But this past week alone, I've had 3 different teachers ask me about my buddy lessons. So I figured that it might be time to really sit down and talk through it and share it with all of you, just what I've learned, how I organize them, and why they've become one of my favorite formats in my entire studio. Now, last year, if you've been following the podcast, you might know that I experimented with a full group lesson model. I transitioned everyone under a certain age into group lessons. It was 4 students at a time and it was multi-level. And the thing is, I'm really glad that I tried this. I learned a lot about my students. I learned a lot about how they learn, how they like to learn. And even more so, I learned a lot about myself as a teacher. The collaboration itself was wonderful, but the logistics weren't. The way that my neighborhood was developed, it doesn't work with parking. And the traffic in and out made me really nervous about my HOA because, it just takes that one phone call. And so I was so paranoid. I even showed up at my neighbor's doors where all the students would gather with flowers. I'm like, here's some flowers. Thank you for not calling on me and telling on me for taking up all this parking. And of course, my neighbors were totally lovely about it, but it just created so much stress for me on a daily level. So that experience made me really appreciate my partner lessons even more because they have the same sense of connection and teamwork, but they are easier to manage. And moving back to a studio that's about half partner lessons this year and half private lessons just really kind of felt like coming home. It was like a nice warm hug because this is where I'm comfortable. This is my sweet spot. All right, so let me go ahead and answer two very big questions that I get about buddy lessons. How are they structured and how do I schedule them? So in my studio, whether you are a private lesson student or a partner lesson student, it is going to be 45 minutes. I do that to keep consistency with my scheduling, to keep it easy, to keep my week balanced. And then that way, if I have to shift things through the school year, it doesn't really affect my schedule. I have toyed around with all kinds of different setups. I have done 50-minute lessons where I get 10 minutes between the small groups or the partners. So 50 minutes on the hour of every hour with a 10-minute break. And I've also done 60 minutes. I personally like the 45 minutes. We get just as much done. It's just as effective and it just keeps things moving along. And it's amazing the time that it saves me on my end for my own schedule. Also, by having half of my studio in partner lessons, I've actually cut my total teaching time by what it would have been if it was a private lesson studio by at least 25%. So I can still serve the same number of students, but I'm protecting my time and my energy a little bit better. And parents appreciate this setup too. When I open the registration at the start of the year, I let them know and I explain upfront that some of the students may be paired together if their levels and times match. Actually, I let them know that that is my intention. This helps set clear expectations and it lets the families know that, again, the pairing is intentional. But I will tell you something. If I can tell that I can't make it work for a student where they're going to have an effective buddy that's going to work for them and help them with their progress and their education, I'm not going to do it. They will be a private lesson student. And yes, the pricing is different in my studio. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time. So it's a little bit less than my private lesson students, but not by much. Now, I have learned to keep the partner lessons just completely simple and realistic. I like to think in fours because of the four main components that maybe I want to cover in each lesson. And I like doing it in fours because I can think about it in 10-minute increments for my 45-minute setup. So that way I have some flexibility built in for wrapping it up, or maybe if something goes a little bit over or something needs a little bit extra attention. And since these are 45-minute lessons, that structure works perfectly. If you teach 60-minute lessons, you could easily add in a fifth component and still have a little wiggle room. And if you end up with a few extra minutes over, well, that's even better because then you can use that time for a quick review game or time to slow down and reflect. Typically in my lessons, when I say my four main components, I like to think about what I like to get completed in every lesson. In my studio, it's sight reading cards from Piano Safari. I love doing collaborative activities, whether it's a game, ensemble, audiation, maybe it's improv, that kind of thing. Repertoire from their method books and maybe some supplemental music like seasonal pieces, recital pieces. There's always something, right? Now, one thing I have really learned with any kind of collaborative format, whether it's partner lessons or full groups, is that, again, if you try to cram in too much, everyone's going to feel it. The lessons are going to feel rushed and nobody leaves relaxed. So definitely keep things simple and paced to make that big difference for everyone. All right. So another reason why I think I have a hard time explaining these classes is because one might look completely different from the other based on who you're teaching. So I'm going to talk about 3 different buddy classes that I'm teaching right now and explain the difference between them and what I do to adjust. So the first one is two super sweet girls that started together right after the pandemic. I think they are on their 5th year, so they're going to get their big 5-year awards this year. And they started together, and guess what? They are still together. I have put them together at the beginning, and then I did separate them to have private lessons, and then they got together again for group lessons, and then they had a choice this year, and guess what? They wanted to be together. And they are kind of like the dream students that we all really want to have. They do the work. They're easy. They're always in a good mood and super sweet. They're always enthusiastic. They do the work. They do the practice. They participate in all the events, and they're just a joy to teach. They are in Piano Safari, and they are at the same level. So we use the same sight reading cards. They almost always have the same method piece. Each of them has a supplemental piece that is different from the other. And we also almost always have a duet going on. So they are consistent, they're curious, and encouraging of each other. This is how you want a buddy lesson to go, but they don't always go like this. Now, I will say sometimes one of the girls might not get as much practice as the other, or maybe they are struggling with a piece a little bit more than the other. So, what I will do in that situation to keep things rolling is, let's say that student A is doing just fine. She practiced, she understands it, she's ready to move on. So what I might do with her is I might say, okay, what can we do to elevate this piece? Can we add more dynamics? Can we do some phrasing? Can you memorize this? Maybe the piece is only for one hand. So can we add the other hand to make it parallel? Can we add harmony? So we can do all kinds of different things for her, while the other student, student B, who maybe is struggling a little bit, gets a little bit more attention, and I can focus with her on what we need to work on specifically to help bring her up to speed. So sometimes there's little changes and tweaks that we make, but they're not usually very big. Okay, my next set of students. These we are going to kindly call my two reluctant boys. These boys would rather be anywhere else than piano. I know that's so shocking. Like, why would you not want to be in piano lessons with me? I don't know. But they don't want to take piano, but their moms really like for them to take, which is great. So they're making them stick with it. And I will say that doing these boys lessons separately were so tough. I mean, it was miserable for them. It was miserable for me. I was trying everything I could think of. I was like doing all the searching. I was, like through piano teacher forums. I was downloading all the music. I was trying all the different things. They just were kind of insistent that they were going to make it miserable no matter what. I decided, you know what? I'm just going to put them together, because if I'm going to have to be miserable twice a week, I'll just put them together and be miserable once a week. And I will tell you that it has made a huge difference. I mean, they are night and day when they are together. They actually act like they like to be there. It's amazing. So I always start with a quick game to break the ice, to kind of get their smiles on, right? But then I do separate them out. One of these boys has a very big learning disability, whereas the other boy is younger and does not, but he is quickly surpassing the older boy. And that's fine. They're both great musicians. It just means that I have to teach them a little bit differently. So they are in completely different method books so that there's no comparison. And I do work with them more one-on-one than I would with the two girls that I was previously talking about. So what I would do after the game with them is I would put one on the computer with boom cards that I have pre-set up underneath their account. If you are not familiar with boom cards, I think the website is boomcard.wow. Think about like flashcards in game form on screens. I know that not everybody loves screens, but it's very effective for these boys. They love it, and I can target it to what they're specifically learning that day, and I can see what they're getting right or wrong. It's still very effective to have in a lesson. So I'll put one of the boys with the boom cards, and the other boy I'll have at the piano, and I will work with him for about 7 to 10 minutes. I will be sure to set a timer so that I don't go over. And that's usually all that I need, because we're going slow. We're not working on a lot. Okay, you got to remember, these boys don't like it very much. So I am picking my battles. Then I will swap them out. And so the other boy will go to the boom cards. He's so excited to go to the boom cards. Yay, big reward. And the other boy comes to the piano. This is great for me And it is great for them because it still gives us that one-on-one, and they know that their time is limited. They know that there's going to be a timer. So they're not sitting there constantly looking at the clock being like, when are we going to be done? When are we going to be done? And then after we do that, I'd bring them back together. We'll do some kind of duets. I usually teach them their technical skills together. So we sit at one piano and we do everything together, together, together. It has made a huge difference for them. And, they might not practice a ton. They still give their moms a hard time at home, but the lessons themselves are positive and progress is steady. And let me tell you, progress might be slower for these boys. However, when they get older, I don't want them to look back on lessons and think, oh my gosh, that was such a drag. I'm so glad that's over. I want them to look back and reflect and be like, that was a lot of fun. I never did learn Beethoven's Fur Elise, but I still had a good time and I learned something. If that's all that I can get out of this, I am happy with it. Okay. The last one I'm going to talk to you about are some sibling pairs that I have. Now, Thursday mornings, I have two sets of siblings. The first set of siblings are two lovely girls. They're very giggly, they're very sweet, and they get along really, really well with each other, which is a big deal. One is 9 and one is 12. The next set of siblings, there is an 8-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl. So I could do one of two things. If the siblings all didn't really like working with one another, I could put the two youngers together for a buddy class, and I could put the two 12-year-old girls together for a buddy class. And I would totally do that. However, these two sets of siblings actually like each other and they like working together. So I make it work, and it makes it a lot easier for the parents as well. So this is how those lessons look. They all come in. Hi, hello. How are you? How was your week? It was great. I played dodgeball and I won. That's awesome. Congratulations. Do your stickers for practice for the week. Okay. And then we get out our sight reading. So the younger ones have the actual physical sight reading cards because that's how the Piano Safari method goes. And then for the older student, they have a sight reading book. And everybody knows that they are to go to their piano, they are to work on the previous week's assignment, and then they are to go to the next assignment and they are to start analyzing. So they already know what they're supposed to do before they even sit down. And this allows me to kind of go back and forth, check on their previous work, check on what they are analyzing for the week. And if I have to work a little bit more with another student, the student waiting for me just knows what to do on their own. So this works really, really nicely. This is one of my non-negotiables. We do this every single lesson, whether they're a private lesson student or a buddy lesson student, and it keeps things going. After that, we will do something collaborative. I'll bring them back to the table. We'll play a game. We'll do some kind of activity. And then we open up their repertoire books. Or right now we're working on holiday pieces. They'll actually pull out their holiday pieces. We'll talk about it. How did it go this week? Is there something specific that you need to work on? Were you confused about something? And then they go to the pianos, they practice a little bit. I kind of bounce back and forth, see how everybody's doing. We come back to the table again. So remember, I'm doing this in 4s. So I've done 3 things so far. I'm about to do my 4th thing. We'll do maybe a duet, we'll do supplemental, or we'll do some other kind of activity. And that, my friends, is how I structure my buddy lessons. And I'm telling you, they work great. It's minimal planning. It's very low stress. And once you get in that groove, you'll be like me and you won't even be able to really articulate what it is and how you do it on the spot because you'll be like, I don't know, I just do it. And it's great. So here's another thing that I've learned. Buddy lessons work great when you have a constant, like a non-negotiable, something that grounds your teaching no matter what's happening. All teachers are different. For me, that is my sight reading through Piano Safari. I use the Piano Safari sight reading cards every week with every single student in my studio. Now, if they've gotten out of those, because they do eventually end, we are in celebration series sight reading. This is a non-negotiable. Everybody does it, even my advanced students. So that routine keeps every lesson productive and gives all the students and the whole studio something to focus on, knowing what to expect and knowing how we start out our lessons. It might seem like a small thing, but this one thing, having your non-negotiable, what you start every lesson with. Give structure to every format that you will teach. If you have questions, please let me know. So hit me up. You can email me at Jaclyn, Jaclyn at scrappypianoteacher.com. And I would love to chat with you. Now, before I wrap up, I do want to say that the partner lessons have become one of the most sustainable parts of my studio. They give students accountability, they give families flexibility, and they help me stay energized as a teacher because I'm moving around, I'm thinking on my feet, I'm engaging constantly. If I have to pivot, I will pivot. It's just fun. And if you've been curious about trying them, definitely start small. Just pair 2 students who seem like a good fit and see what happens. Keep one constant, right? And keep your lesson plan really, really simple. And before we wrap up, I do want to remind you that just because something works beautifully for one teacher doesn't mean that it has to work the same way for you. So you get to create the lessons that fit your students and your studio culture. And if you're not sure if something's going to work, you guys, just try it anyway. You do not know until you do it. You are running your business. This is your studio. If you want to try something, try it out. And if it doesn't work, well then fine, just go back to what was working before. So don't be afraid to jump in. You know what you're doing. You're in this profession for a reason. So don't forget to stay tuned for Black Friday. I'm going to be having a super special sale with a bonus for something great that's coming in January that I'm hoping is going to totally make your life easier through March, April, and May, the ultimate burnout months. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.